Well, it's great to be with you guys. Tell me really quickly, what class is this? What is the,
So it's Business Leaders Forum,
okay,
and it's a required class for a business degree,
okay.
and it's 1 credit, and we have 1 speaker a week for the semester.
And then are you guys at different levels as far as sophomore, junior, seniors?
Yeah.
Okay. But you're all going for more of a business degree.
It's open to any student, but I think you guys are all business, right? Yeah.
Business here. My major, but
It kind of helps me just orient a couple things.
yeah, HR management.
I got some information lately as well, that helped me kind of, but I think I do one of these presentations probably about, let's say about once every 3 months. But sometimes even like, there was one year I only did a couple, but usually I'm doing a few of these per year. It's always fun. I really love it from the perspective of staying connected with students. Do it a little bit in high schools, but a lot of times at the high school level, they're just not quite thinking about life yet. They're still kind of in this weird bubble. But there are certain times when that's been effective. At the college level, especially as you move further into your junior and senior year, it starts to become really applicable. So anyway, I'm really honored to be here and grateful for the opportunity. Hopefully what I share today will be some takeaways that will kind of stir some thoughts and even kind of cause you to think about the transition from where you are now to where you will be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. Time goes so quickly, and I'm 55 years old, and I can remember as if it were yesterday. I was attending Weber State University and was in similar situations. And so, just kind of keep that in perspective. I know you hear that a lot, but time really does march very, very quickly. And it seems like just a blink goes by, and then all of a sudden 10 years goes by. And you kind of think, oh, where did that time go? And where I want to start with this conversation today is with this topic of leadership. I want to start from the perspective of leadership is not a position. So I don't want you to raise your hand or answer audibly. I just want you to think of this in your own mind. If you're taking notes, I want you to write down what your answer is in the context of this question. If you think about your career 10 years from now, so you're in your kind of early 30s, mid 30s, however old you are now, you're going to be kind of somewhere in that time frame in life. I want you to answer the question, do you want to be a leader? Okay, so just, again, you can write it down. Don't raise your hand or audible. It's just your own thoughts. Okay, now I want you to think out 20 years. So now you're in your early 40s, mid 40s. Do you want to be a leader in whatever capacity? Okay. Okay, so I want you just to hold both those answers now in your mind. And I'm going to talk about leadership. So leadership is not a position. Leadership is a choice. And this truth, a mentor of mine, when I was I think I met him when I was 27, maybe 28, somewhere in that time frame in life. We're still friends today. He's about 10 years older than me, so he actually, in fact, he just announced they're having a big retirement party for him in like February. He lives in Wisconsin, and that's where we met. I worked with him back in Wisconsin. So I think I'm going to fly out in the spring or in February to go to his big retirement party. But we've stayed very, very close. I consider him a dear friend, but he really was a very significant mentor to me when I was at the early stage of my career. And he's the individual. I had moved into a manager role, so I was, by position, I was a leader. I had people reporting to me. But as he watched me and he watched how I interacted with my team, he pulled me aside one day, I'll never forget. We stepped in, it was private. And he said, Mel, you're thinking about your position in the wrong way. You're wanting to be a leader where you just give direction, where you just tell the team what to do. And he said, that's really just positional leadership. And what he taught me was that leadership is really more about influence. And at the core of leadership is a choice. And so, if you think about where you are in an organization, if you are what they call an individual contributor, or like if you're an HR generalist, or if you're in marketing, you're a marketing, analyst, or a data analyst, or if you work on the manufacturing side, if you're doing something and you're just a worker, a lot of times in business, they refer to that role as an individual contributor. And what I have come to appreciate is many times individuals in those roles are often more influential and more of a leader than often individuals who have a position of leadership. Okay. And so what I want your mind to kind of think about is, as you step into your career, right out of the gate, if your aspiration in 10 years and 20 years is to have people reporting to you and be that type of leader, your ability to be a leader actually starts now. It actually starts with the choices you're making, because your ability to influence people has nothing to do with if they really report to you. I have personally, this individual who was my mentor, he actually taught me that of my team, I think I had 15 people on my team, only 2 of them actually respected me. All the rest couldn't stand me. They didn't want to work for me. They were going to him saying, I can't stand working for Mel. It's driving me crazy. So I was their leader, but I wasn't their leader. So I had some authority positionally over them, but they didn't want to work for me, because I had made choices that essentially were kind of making their life not enjoyable at work. And so when you start to think about this concept of leadership as a choice, it really comes down to a choice to care, particularly, to care about people, but it's also to care about the work you're doing, take pride in the work you're doing. You care about excellence. But the core of it is more in the context of, you genuinely care. The next is that it's a choice to actually make influence, to have influence on others, on the organization. It's a choice to trust and be trusted. How many of you have heard the term psychological safety? Just raise your hand if you've heard that term. It's something I would highly encourage that you go and watch some there's some great podcasts. In fact, the foremost leader on psychological safety is actually here in Utah. And the organization's down in Utah County, and they do a whole consulting practice around psychological safety. The term has been around for probably 50 years, but it became famous by Google. So in the year probably 2005, they started a project called Project Aristotle, and they studied. I think at the time they were studying almost 100 teams on Google, and they were identifying and learning, why did some teams at Google perform poor? Why did some teams perform average? But then they saw on the charts, some teams performed exceptionally better. Like it was like poor performers, okay performers, exceptional performers. Like the gap was just significant. And so then they started to do correlation. Like they would say, okay, well, what is occurring in the great teams that's not occurring in the other teams? or inverse, what are things that, are not occurring and vice versa, they would analyze this. And the number one factor they found in the great teams is that the leader of that team fostered an environment of psychological safety. So psychological safety by definition says that I feel free to speak my truth. So if I'm in a meeting and of course, Google, they're all about technology. That's the world I come from. There's constant disagreement, constant. Like it, and so if you think about it in the context of like another profession, like manufacturing or assembly line or construction work, I actually grew up on a farm, and my dad, as a fruit farmer, there's not a lot of change from year to year. You plow the field in February, March, you plant the field around Mother's Day, and then you care for it, and then in the fall you harvest. And so there's not a lot of disagreement on, hey, you might have a conversation, should we plant cantaloupe here or should we plant corn? But there's not a lot at stake. I mean, if you decide to plant cantaloupe one year and the next year corn, okay, whatever. Tomatoes, how many tomato plants are we going to plant? Not a lot of disagreement. Whereas in the tech world, the disagreements will happen every single day. Every day. So if I'm on Slack, if I'm in a meeting and we're talking about some idea, the disagreements will flow immediately. And if the manager fosters a culture where the individuals on the team feel safe to disagree, to speak an opposing opinion, that very culture is what created the environment for the teams to perform extremely well. Now, what they found is psychological safety isn't just present or not present in technology teams, it's present or not present in any team. And we now live in a world where things are moving so fast, where if I'm in HR or marketing or the finance team or whatever, there's the need for psychological safety is really prevalent. What they also found on those teams is that the manager affected psychological safety by about 40%. So the other 60% of what created psychological safety on the team was actually the team members. It was how the team members responded to each other. What's your name?
Devin.
Devin. So think about it. If we're on a team, and I'm an engineer and you're an engineer, and we have a manager, Whitney is our manager, and you and I are talking, and you are saying something like, okay, well, I think that for this particular thing, we should do X, Y, and Z. And I say, oh, Devin, I don't think we should do that. And let's say that you say to me, you know what? I want to hear your idea. Like Mel, why do you feel that way? And I'm like, oh, well, I did something similar like a year ago, and it actually didn't do what we thought it was going to do. It didn't turn out. And so let me kind of share with you what that experience was. And I take a couple minutes and you're like, oh my gosh, I would never have thought of that. You're right. Let's turn it around. And let's say that I stayed in a meeting. Hey, Devin, I really feel like we should do this. And you say, oh, Mel, I disagree. And this is my response. Devin, you're really like, at what level are you? Junior, mid? Do you not know my title? Like, I'm a senior engineer. I've been doing this for 15 years. How long have you been an engineer? Like, really, we're going to go this direction. How likely are you to speak up the next time?
Not really.
Not really. And that experience highlights how psychological safety either happens that you created for me, or psychological safety is killed, the example I gave to you. That happens over and over and over. So what they learned in this Project Aristotle is the manager can foster about 40% of the equation, but the 60% of the equation that creates psychological safety is actually team members. It's how team members treat each other. So I'm telling you, from day one, when you step into your career, you will make a name for yourself by being a person who shows respect for others' ideas. That the way you respond and how you honor them, how you get curious, like, oh my gosh, I would never have seen that. And it's interesting how the characteristics that prevent psychological safety are the attributes nobody wants. Arrogance, pride, I'm right, you're wrong. I'm more senior than you, look at us from the standpoint of where we are in our career. My title, I mean, it's all the things that nobody really, like, nobody is gonna go into their career thinking, man, when I'm 10 years in, I wanna be a jerk and I don't want anybody to talk to me. Nobody thinks that. But yet, if you don't have intentionality about actually wanting to be a leader, you will fall victim to creating some bad habits that can literally stifle your ability to actually grow throughout your career. So these are 4 choices that you can make in the context of being a leader. Let me go through a few more. You have a choice to have integrity, a choice to listen before speaking, a choice to tell the truth, to own the outcome, not the excuse, to be curious, to serve first and be served last, to set a high standard and live it, to make the hard call when it's unpopular, to give credit and take the blame, to invest in people before projects, to coach and help others, to model the behavior you expect, to slow down and then speed up later, to simplify the complex, to align my words with my actions, to welcome dissent and hard feedback, to change my mind when facts change, to share context, not just commands, to ask better questions, not give quick answers, to hold the line on values under pressure, to act with imperfect information, to say no to good, to protect the great, to build systems, not heroics, to measure what matters and celebrate progress. I could literally go on and build probably 10 more pages of the kinds of choices you make if you want to be a leader. Now, think about this. Now go back to the question I posed earlier. You want to be a leader in 10 years? Do you want to be a leader in 20 years? It's a great aspiration. I will tell you that as you progress in your career, don't measure your success by where you are in the hierarchy of an organization. So I have found with some individuals, they think when they're young, in order to be successful, I have to be a manager, I have to be a director, I have to be a vice president, or I have to own my own company. But I know some individuals in my career who have been individual contributors their entire career. Now, my world is technology. And so I've seen engineers be like just an engineer for their entire career. They've never had direct reports. They've made incredible money. They've had incredible impact on organizations. But more importantly, they've been amazing leaders. They've influenced, mentored, and helped people. And so the desire to be a leader shouldn't be dependent on positional leadership. It should be dependent on these things. These are the aspirations that you should aspire to. Now, let me ask this question. If you have these attributes, if you're consciously making these choices and these become kind of your brand and your style at work, and then you're up for promotion when you're 31, who do you think they're going to hire? You. Yeah, they're going to hire you. Because they've already seen you in action. They've already seen that you have all the attributes they want in a person that's going to have people report to them. And I've had teams as big as 1,400 that have reported to me. Right now I have my smallest team, about 250. But I will tell you, and I say this to every single person who wants to move into management, these are the attributes I'm looking for. I want to see you demonstrate as an individual contributor that you are consciously making the choices to be a leader. that you have a reputation of these being part of who you are at your core, that your character is built in this way. Okay, so I'm going to go through and I'm going to talk about my career, but before I do, what are some of your thoughts? What have you observed in what I've already shared? What questions do you have? So I'm gonna talk through my career for a very specific reason, to give a little bit more of my background, but based on what I've shared, what are your questions or thoughts? Yeah.
What exactly do you mean by imperfect information?
So a lot of times it happens a lot in life, not just in the work world, but often you receive direction to do something and you don't have the whole story. Like, and in software, it happens all the time. So because my world is software, I consider myself a nerd. I became a geek when I was 14 years old. It's the only, other than my dad being a farmer and having spent a lot of time on an orchard farm, I haven't worked in any other capacity. So I can appreciate what happens in like a manufacturing company or a medical company, because I've done a lot of software work for them, but I really only know the profession of building software. But I will tell you, when we get a request to build something, I actually measure how clear the requirements are with a gauge. I can actually look at the requirement and I can tell you on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being it is a perfect set of requirements, which quite frankly almost never exists, or a 1 that basically it's so vague that the probability of me hitting, if I were to take like a gun and I were to turn in a circle, my probability of hitting would be that probable. Like it would literally have to be just absolutely perfect when I pull the trigger that I would hit the requirement. That's a 1. Most of the time, I want the requirement to be about a 6 or a 7. I'm not looking for perfection in the requirement or the ask of what they're wanting us to build, but I at least want enough clarity that they've thought through what the outcome should be. I want the software to perform this task. I want the report to give us this data. And so when you think about this notion of how you deal with things that aren't like complete, like you get a reputation for being the person that's easy to work with in those situations, or somebody who immediately creates discomfort, immediately creates this notion of like almost like I'm gonna do CYA, like immediately, because there's a high probability we're gonna get it wrong. And so you're gonna immediately create this tension that if we get it wrong, it's because you didn't tell me with clarity what I should do. The other end of the spectrum is you're going to get requests from your boss, from other people, and they're going to be ambiguous. And so you step into it and you get a reputation for being easy to work with. Okay, great. That sounds like, I think I understand this. You restate it back. Maybe it's in an email or a further meeting. You know, this is what I heard you ask for. This is what I think I understand. How close are we? And you actually are the one who starts to fill in the blanks. That you actually do brainstorming sessions. You naturally understand how to kind of tease out more thinking so that the clarity of the request, maybe when you got it, it was like a 4. And then you, by just generally talking back and forth, you've moved the clarity of that request all the way up to a 7 or an 8. And now both you and the person who asked have even more clarity on actually what needs to get done. You build that kind of reputation, people will love you, because the requests that come, and they come from all angles in an organization. You know, it's not just top down. Sometimes it comes sideways, like, you know, like maybe the person in the HR department asks for something, or you know, a customer asks for something. Your boss for sure is going to make a lot of requests of you, but you are constantly working with incomplete information. And how you deal with that is a very big part of being a leader. It's a part of creating that feeling of, hey, it's okay, let's figure this out. Like I don't quite have enough information to work with, but But let's step into this and let's figure out, let's get more clarity, let's gain more understanding. What I have found also is when you have a reputation of doing that, people love to go to you even to brainstorm. Like, you'll find that people will come out of the woodwork and say, oh my gosh, Mel, can I just have an hour of your time? I want to brainstorm with you some stuff, because you actually help spark ideas and you help me think about some things that I wouldn't have thought about. That's going to get me to how I define my request with more completeness. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
What else? There are questions. Yeah.
I wanted to ask a question about to build systems, not heroics. What does that mean?
So this is a really important one. When you look at the way an organization scales, how it grows, if parts of your business are built to be completely dependent upon an individual, then in business, we often define that individual is kind of always put in hero mode. So in order for something to get done, we're dependent on her actually being the person who does it. Now there are times where by role, by the very nature of what we are asking, that yes, we do need that person to do X, Y, and Z. But even in those situations, a good business leader will also understand what happens when that person gets sick. What happens if that person goes on vacation? Who covers for her? How do we make sure that business continues to flow in the context of her responsibilities? But it becomes even more critical if let's say you're a $10 million company and you want to grow to be a $50 million company. If you have a whole bunch of individuals where the entire process and structure is dependent upon them, the company as a whole can't grow. And so you have to build systems that actually create repeatability and scalability. But there's a strong characteristic among people. Sometimes people refer to them as kind of professional narcissists. I don't typically like the term narcissism because I think it's a really small psychology subset I kind of like to leave it to people who are truly narcissists. But I always use that term to kind of help you identify that there are going to be individuals you will see that love the glory. They love, hey, everything was dependent upon me, and I'm super smart. I'm a hard worker. I show up early. I stay late. This company would die without me. They have this hero complex, and as a leader, if I'm over that person, while I appreciate what he or she is doing, over time, I actually recognize that strength is actually a weakness to the company. And so the reason why this becomes a leadership choice is that as a leader, when I see someone who is incredibly talented, they have huge amounts of capacity and intellect and gifts, but they're willing to mentor others and help others become good and even great next to them. I love that person because I see in that individual the ability to scale and grow. And I see in that individual, the ability to create business continuity. And then you think about that person who's an individual contributor, if they move into a leader role and they naturally have the mindset of helping everybody become good. That's an attribute that is really good as a leader. Leaders who take a heroic mindset actually infuse that culture into an entire team of people. And then they're like, without our team, the company would fail. And that becomes an even bigger problem. And so it's really important to understand how over time you have to build systems that are repeatable, not heroics.
Follow-up question. In that case, if there is somebody that's like that, kind of like the spotlight needs to be on me as a leader, what would you do?
So I have a whole training. There's like a whole deck that has like 30 slides in it just to answer that question.
Oh,
Yeah, like I've led enough people over the years that I understand particularly in software engineering, the psychology of what motivates those types of people. And so in my world, in software engineering, as an individual grows and their intellect becomes greater, if they have the propensity to want the spotlight, I have to help them understand that that will actually stymie their career. They'll actually grow, they'll be a senior engineer, they'll want to become a principal engineer, but they won't be ready for promotion. They'll actually be a senior and they'll plateau. And that's as high as they'll get. They'll be a senior engineer for years and years. In fact, I have an individual, I mean, you guys don't know the people, but so I'm not gonna name the person, but there's an individual in our company right now. I'm literally coaching him right now on this very subject. Because when the projects happen and they're successful, it is 100% him. And so starting about 6 months ago, we worked together, we created some shared goals. And one of the goals was that in every situation where he is actually putting his fingers on the keyboard to write code, he has to have another engineer sitting with him in what we call paired programming. And in paired programming, the higher engineer, the smarter engineer, actually takes their hands physically off the keyboard, and the lower engineer puts their hands on the keyboard. And so they're talking verbally or over Slack. And as they're working, the lower engineer, the mid-level engineer, is actually like, and it's a really interesting exercise. If you ever watch paired programming, there's actually not a lot of talking. They'll sit for probably 2 hours, and in those 2 hours, they might have, I don't know, 20 sentences of conversation. And the conversation kind of looks like this. The architect, this principal engineer will say, okay, what do you think the problem is that we're going to solve? And the lower engineer says, okay, I think what we need to do is refactor and write the code here so that we don't have a memory leak. So we have this situation. And he says, okay, that's correct, but there's something else. What do you think it is? And the lower engineer says, I don't know. And he goes, okay, well, why don't you look here? So he doesn't tell him the answer. He says, why don't you look over here? So he looks through some code. He goes, oh, I can see exactly what it is. And he goes, great, perfect, you found it. Okay, how do you think we're going to solve it? And the lower engineer says, okay, well, I think I've got to write this, and I've got to make this connector. I've got to refactor this code. Perfect. Go ahead and do it. So he sits there quiet. He's just watching the code. The lower engineer is writing code. 45 minutes goes by, and he says, okay, I think I've got it. Okay, perfect. I've been watching you. There's only 2 things you did wrong. Go back through and look at it and see if you can find the 2 things. He goes, okay. So he goes back through and looks, and he goes, okay, I found one right there. Perfect. And he looks and looks. 15 minutes goes by. I can't find it. And he says, try again. Go for a few more minutes. And he says, okay, all right. Let me show you where it's at. It shows him in the code. Says, now, can you understand where we got to this point? If that had stayed there, you would have actually introduced another bug. You would have introduced another problem. And the lower engineer is like, oh my gosh, I would have never understood that. And 2 hours have gone by, and now you have a lower engineer who's been personally mentored by an architect. His intellect and his ability just grew by leaps and bounds. You do that over and over and over. This lower engineer, after 6 months, is an architect. And now I have 2 architects. That is what we talk about. That's what I'm talking about by thinking systemically rather than through heroics. And I'm literally coaching a guy right now to do that. Yeah. Other questions, thoughts? Okay. All right. So I'm going to show you the progression of my career. So before I do this, I want to ask a question. And I'm asking this question, I'm asking this question not for any sort of compliment. I'm asking this question because you've never met me before. I can legitimately say none of you have ever met me before. But I've talked now for half an hour. Would you say that I am articulate?
Yes.
Would you say that I have a good flow of logic in my communication?
Yes.
Have I been hard or easy to understand? The things that I've shared with you, do they resonate or are they confusing?
Presentation.
Okay. Okay, now let me tell you about me. I didn't learn to read until I was in the 5th grade. I'm dyslexic. That never goes away. It's part of who you are forever. You just learn coping skills. That's why I didn't learn to read till I was in the 5th grade. I had a huge stuttering problem till I was 25. I was the kid that nobody talked to. I was the kid who was in what was called Title I. So I was always the dumb kid. I always got pulled out of my class. When I decided to actually go to college, it's because I had taught myself how to program and I loved writing programs. I loved writing code. Because in writing code, I was able to step past my dyslexia. Code is a different mental structure because you don't just read code from left to right, you read it in kind of a 3-dimensional way. You see it differently. And so it gave me confidence because I loved it. I loved that I could write something and it did what I told it to do. And people, even when I was like 16 and I wrote my first program and a guy paid me for it, I was like, oh my gosh, Dad, somebody gave me $100. I just wrote this code. I thought that was the coolest thing as a 16-year-old. And so when I went to college, my computer science classes were fun and easy. Everything else was so hard. I had to read all my English classes, all my history classes. I had to read everything 2 and 3 times because when you read as a dyslexic person, everything's backward. My eyes, if you watch my eyes on camera, my eyes literally will just go like this. And my kids they always tease me because if I go to like a whiteboard and write something, my dyslexia comes out. I'll write the last letter of the word first or the last word in a sentence first. It's the weirdest thing. I just do it subconsciously because that is how my mind processes.
What about when you type on a computer?
That's fine. Typing is no problem. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
But I've learned lots of coping skills over the years. So would any of you have guessed that was my upbringing?
No.
Okay. And I share this with you because all of us come from backgrounds and perspectives that stack the odds against us. We all have massive things to overcome. And as a leader, having that mindset that the people you work with, again, if you're a leader and you have people reporting to you, be sensitive, be conscientious that they are humans and they're struggling with insecurities, with feelings of self-doubt, imposter syndrome, whatever, they're just struggling. And if you become a person while you don't have people reporting to you, that somebody can be that you're their confidant, that you can behind closed doors say, Devin, what you did last week was amazing. Like I was blown away what you shared. And you're the person that infuses confidence in other people. That habit has to start when nobody reports to you. That characteristic has to be in you, that you genuinely see and acknowledge the good in others and help lift them up. Because the world needs more of that. The world needs people. I've been shocked over my career. There was an individual, it's about 6 years ago, and at the time I had about 500 people reporting to me. And I was in a software design meeting and something came up and we talked, talked through it. The guy had only been employed with the company for like a month. And I sent him a Slack message after the meeting. I think his name was John. And I just said, hey, John, that was amazing. Like, I couldn't believe you're brand new here and that bug, we've been wrestling with that thing for 6 months and you nailed it. And just didn't think anything of it. A couple months goes by and he sends me a note. He says, hey, can I swing by your office? I'd love to chat. And I'm like, sure. I have an open door policy. And he swung by my office and he just said, hey, I just want you to know. I think the guy was like 32 years old. He said, I have never actually been thanked or acknowledged for my skill set in my entire career. Nobody had ever actually patted him on the back and said, great job. And he said, and I don't work there anymore. I've been gone for a while. Actually, it would have been longer than that. It would have been 8 years ago. Because I just talked to him about a year ago and he'd been there for about 6 years. And he goes, I don't want to work anywhere else. Because I want to work in a culture where people actually appreciate and express that acknowledgement culturally, that it's part of they are. So just know that when you build that habit now, it will bleed into when you're a leader. So I started my career at 21 professionally. I made a little money writing code and whatnot, but I got my first big full-time job at Morgan International at 21. I was a software engineer. The company is now Autoleave. They're up in Ogden. They make airbags for cars. I love that job so much. I was a Unix admin and a software programmer for them for about 5 years. I left there, went to work for the state of Utah. I took one job at the state of Utah, and then Governor Levitt in 1995 posted a position that he wanted to bring the internet into Utah state government. I applied, I got the job at 25, and I was in effect reporting to him. There was not one other individual I worked with, but I'm the one who built the state of Utah's first website at 25. So we didn't have an internet presence. I built the first apps online with a hunting and fishing license. We built an app with the driver's license, the insurance industry to query our insurance records, our driver records, so the insurance company could kind of query in and say, you know, Whitney, have you been in any crashes? And they could actually query and actually get that data direct. We built a whole bunch of things during the 5 years I was there. Then I went to work for Burby in Wisconsin. I was a manager there as well. I built landsend.com and a few other
Oh, really?
big ventures back there. And then I came to work for STG, and they hired me to be their director of software engineering. And then I got recruited by the LDS Church to go work there, and that's where I had the biggest team. I had 1,400 engineers at that place, and I was there for about 15 years. Then I went to work for OC Tanner. I had about 500 people there, and then Henry Schein pulled me away, and I had about 500 people there. And then I got laid off from Henry Schein because they did this big downsizing, and then STG hired me back, and I'm now their chief technology and strategy officer at STG. So that's kind of been the progression of my career. Any thoughts, questions?
Which was your favorite place to work? If you had to pick one. I mean, I know you've been at STG twice.
I have genuinely loved all of them. I'm a big believer that there's no perfect place to work.
Yeah.
So all of them have varied degrees of things that I liked and struggled with. But my mindset was always, how can we help things be better? Like how, and when I mean that genuinely, like when we see, you know, those deep problems that just keep resurfacing over and over, to understand how to, you know, put a team together and solve those problems. Sometimes it's directly in the software, sometimes it's even the culture of how the teams work and so forth. I really love my career, and I'm deeply passionate about people and about great technology, great software. I personally built over about 120 major systems in my career. And when I classify major, that's more than a $2 million project. So I have a whole bunch of other projects that are smaller, but about 120 major projects that I've built in my career. And I love it. Like I just absolutely, I'm 55 years old and I feel just as jazzed today as when I was 21. Like I am super energized. People sometimes are like, can you please just like slow down a little bit? I'm like, no, you gotta pick up your pace. But it's a great question, but no, I really loved all of them.
That's great.
Yeah.
I have a quick question. So I see that you got your degree like in computer science. Just with everything going on with AI and different applications coming out that can literally like write code, AI writing code. Do you think it's like worth it to continue to maybe if we're thinking about a degree in computer science or software engineering, do you think it's worth it or?
It's a great question. I get asked that question probably weekly.
Yeah.
And I believe that AI number one, it's real and it's advancing very, very fast. In the progression of how it's advancing, it's right now advancing almost twice as fast as anything they've been predicting for the last 10 years. So they the guys at Open Labs or ChatGPT, they're kind of the primary thought leaders in the space. They predicted in the year 2000 that an AI model would generate its own replicated model around the year 2030. That's when they thought it would effectively kind of spawn its own model. And that happened last year. Verifiably, it's now happened thousands and thousands of times. They're actually now building in more safeguards, understanding how to prevent the spawning, how to shut it down. You know, there's lots of just weird, almost kind of sci-fi level, you know, thinking as far as like, all these doomsday what if scenarios.
Yeah.
I don't think we have a lot to worry about until we're kind of 150 years from now. When AI starts to be fully embedded in autonomous robots, we will, but we've got plenty of time to figure out what those safeguards are. We've got plenty of time to kind of understand essentially how to pull the plug, how to create, essentially to create morality in AI. We've got plenty of time to work through that. But we are stepping into a part of the human history that is new to us. I don't know if you've ever listened to the father of AI, just received the Nobel Prize. Go listen to that speech. It's incredibly insightful.
What's it called?
So I can't remember the guy's name. He just received the Nobel Prize for the invention of AI. And at his acceptance speech, he talks about what we as humanity need to be thinking about. And the biggest thing is to really understand and be humble enough and recognize that we have created something that is actually now smarter than us. And as a human species, we've never had that. We've always been at the top of the food chain. And so understanding how to work with and interact with AI is literally going to be one of the big challenges of your generation. It's going to be understanding how to do that. And I personally believe that because AI does not have full morality yet, a full sense of character, a full sense of values and principles, and for sure it is not human, I think the thing that will truly separate you and create, viability in your career is that you have the attributes I talked about today. And I think that that's what's going to happen in the context of how we train AI. So now to directly answer your question, in the world of software engineering, I think we're only 10 years away from the majority of software code actually being written by AI. Right now, AI in a code perspective is only giving software engineers about a 15% performance gain. So we still have to have a human who's thinking through the logic and the structure of how we write code, and the AI augments and makes them about 15% more efficient. But that 15% in a few years is going to become 20%, and then 30%, and then 50%. And so I'm already coaching software engineers on how to become orchestrators and actually put themselves in a leader role over multiple AI agents. So they effectively, as one engineer, can run up to 20 or 30 AI agents and have them do essentially the grunt work of software programming, which then will elevate their role. And I think that type of engineer pretty quickly is going to start to command upwards of $350,000, $400,000 a year. Because if you think about it, if you got one guy who's effectively managing 20 people that cost the organization nothing, yeah, that's a very cost effective and very valuable person. And it takes a certain mindset to be able to manage engineers in that way. Even though those engineers aren't human, they're still effectively managing them. And that's happening. So it's still a very viable profession. I think 50 years from now, we will be in a full voice mode where the notion of how we actually push advances forward will be very similar to what you used to see in Star Trek, where they would interact with the computer and walk through logic questions. You know, let's go down this path, let's explore this, and we back out, we explore this, and the computer is working with you to essentially walk down new ideas. And if you were to take each of those ideas into like a 2025 timeframe, each of those would be multi-million-dollar projects that will essentially happen in the course of a conversation. So I really do believe in your lifetime, the advances that we will see in humanity. I just hope that they end up being good for humanity. I hope that it ends up producing more good than ill. But it's real. AI is extremely real.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, we're at time. I hope today's been helpful. There's some other slides that are on there that are also kind of beneficial. You can look through, and if you ever have a question or anything, you're welcome to reach out and grab me on LinkedIn or reach out if you have any follow-on questions.